I expected noise. Outside Mdina's gate, that's exactly what my ears registered. Tour groups. Cameras. Coaches arriving every few minutes. Then I walked through the gate. The people didn't disappear. The noise did. Not gradually. Instantly. I found myself doing what everyone does in a quiet room, lowering my voice. Treading more softly. Apologizing to a stranger for footsteps that weren't loud enough to matter. Nobody asked me to. There wasn't a single sign. And yet hundreds of complete strangers seem to have made the same unspoken decision. I've never felt anything quite like it. So, what is it about this place? The first thing I noticed is how little room there is. The streets aren't grand avenues. They're narrow enough that the buildings almost seem to lean towards one another, their honey-colored limestone glowing in the Maltese sun. A horse and carriage stood waiting in one of the side streets when I visited, and for a moment it stopped feeling like a tourist attraction. It simply looked normal, as though the street hadn't entirely settled on which century it belonged to. But what I will always remember was the people. Nobody was being shushed. Nobody was whispering because they had to. Everyone simply did. It's one of those tiny things that remain unnoticed, but once perceived, it's impossible to unsee them. So why does this happen? Part of the answer may be history. For centuries, Mdina wasn't simply another beautiful town. It was Malta's capital. Long before Valletta existed, this was where power lived. The Phoenicians fortified it. The Romans expanded it. The Arabs reshaped it and gave it the name we still use today. Then everything changed. When the Knights arrived in 1530, political power began moving towards the harbor. After the Great Siege, they built Valletta. Government moved. Trade moved. The daily business of running an island moved. Mdina stayed where it had always been. The crowds of officials, merchants and carts did not. The city grew quieter without anyone deciding it should. And eventually, people started calling it the Silent City. History explains part of it. The rest is surprisingly practical. Only around 200 people live inside the walls today, and traffic is heavily restricted. Residents are among the very few people allowed to drive inside, so instead of engines, you hear footsteps. Stone beneath shoes. A conversation carried around a corner. The occasional church bell. Silence isn't actually silent. It's just missing all the sounds we've become so used to that we no longer hear them. I'm curious if anyone feels the same thing when visiting Mdina. Does the city become muted for everyone? Or was that simply the day I happened to be there? Of course, quiet places have a habit of collecting stories. Mdina's best-known one belongs to a young woman called Katerina. According to the legend, she defended herself against the knight who attacked her. She killed him, was sentenced to death, and before her execution was granted one final wish. She chose to marry the man she loved. Then she was beheaded. Today, people say her spirit still appears near Veliana Palace, dressed in white but without her head. Visitors occasionally claim they've spotted her in photographs after getting home. And that's where most retellings stop. And, presumably, that's the easy version. Because the moment I actually looked, I couldn't verify the story. I couldn't find a historical record confirming that Katerina ever existed. But that almost isn't the interesting part. What I find intriguing is that people still tell the story, even though it can't be proven. Silence is a hard thing to hold. A ghost is easier to hold. So we tell the ghost. Perhaps the ghost isn't really the story, it's the need to invent one. Katerina isn't a story Mdina tells about its past. She's the story Mdina tells about its silence. And that's why she'll never quite leave. What I enjoyed most about Mdina wasn't solving a mystery. It was noticing one. A place full of tourists that somehow behaves as though everyone has agreed to whisper. Katerina isn't a story Mdina tells about its past. She's the story Mdina tells about its silence. And that's why she'll never quite leave. What I enjoyed most about Mdina wasn't solving a mystery. It was noticing one. A place full of tourists that somehow behaves as though everyone has agreed to whisper. A city that stopped being Malta's capital centuries ago, yet somehow still feels as though time is taking its time before moving on. That's a rare feeling. If you've never been, I hope you can experience it one day. And if you have been, I'd love to know whether the city quieted for you too. If you enjoy looking at Malta this way, There are plenty more corners of the island that have made me stop and wonder. And if mysterious places are your thing, I made a 2-part video about one of Malta's oldest unsolved puzzles. I'll leave it on the screen for you.